This video will discuss angles formed by parallel lines cut by transversal. But before we get started into our examples, I would like to show you that whenever you see parallel lines, as you see here, that are cut by a transversal, that's the line that's going through them, then it's going to form 8 different angles. So in this chart below, what you see are the types that will fall under supplementary, which means that if I add 2 angles together, they're going to equal 180. And the types that will be congruent, which means that if I were to set the angles equal to each other, they're going to be the exact same degree or measure. As far as supplementary angles, we have what's known as linear pair. And again, it's 2 angles that add together to equal 180. And that's also the definition of supplementary. That's what that means there. Linear pair means I have 2 angles on a line. So here's a line, and I have 2 angles. If I add those 2 angles, they have to equal 180. If I go down below to the other parallel line and I do the same thing, I still have a linear pair. So far, that's 2. Let's keep up with how many we have. If I go to the line above and I go beneath, I have a linear pair. Go back to that other line and go beneath, I still have another linear pair. So far, we have 4. Now, guess what? If I look at it, my transversal, that's a line, right? So on either side, I have 1 linear pair, 2 linear pair. If I go down to the bottom, 1 linear pair, 2 linear pairs. How many linear pairs did we count? Well, what I counted was 8. So we have a total of 8 linear pairs shown. Now, if I want to look at same side, or sometimes you'll hear people say consecutive, and that just means in same side interior. It means it's inside of my parallel line. So these are my parallel lines. These angles are on the same side. So that's one set. And then on this side, inside of my parallel lines, I still have 2 angles on the same side. So what you just noticed is I have 2 sets of angles that fall under the category same side interior or consecutive. Again, if I have different values or expressions shown, what I want to do is add those angles together and set them equal to 180. On this side, I have congruent angles, which means they're going to equal each other. So alternate exterior is what we'll start with first. Okay, so the parallel lines, again, that's what we're focused on. Alternating, meaning they're on the opposite side of my transversal. So on this side, I have angle 1, and it's outside of my parallel line. So that's why I'm saying exterior, like exit. And if I go to the opposite side, exterior, so alternate, I'm alternating across that transversal. 1 and 8 will be considered alternate exterior angles. In addition, outside, 2 and 7 will be considered alternate exterior angles, for a total of 2 alternate exterior angles. So alternate interior means inside of my parallel line. So any angles that are found inside. So I have 3, which is on one side of my transversal, and I have 6. So 3 and 6 are considered alternate interior angles. On the opposite side, I have 4 and 5. So 4 and 5 are considered alternate interior. Interior means inside. So IN. So when I'm looking at that, I see that I also have 2 of those. And then corresponding means that if I were to pick up what I see as kind of a crooked plus sign, so this is like a plus sign, if I were to pick that up and I placed it down here, which ones correspond? What I mean by that is on top, I have angle 1. If I were to pick that up, guess what? It's going to be on top with angle 5. So angle 1 and 5 will correspond. Angle 2 and 6 will correspond. Angle 3 and 7 will correspond. And finally, angle 4 and 8 will correspond. So in doing that, how many corresponding angles did you catch? We'll look at it. I have 4 right here, right? So I have 4 corresponding angles. So that's what we're going to write down here. And then the last type of angles that we're going to talk about are vertical angles. And vertical angles, as I've mentioned before, are when you have 2 lines that intersect and they meet at the same vertex, you're going to create what looks like a little bow tie to me. Those are called vertical angles. So in this case, angles 1 and 4 are vertical angles. Angles 3 and 2 are vertical angles. So what I did to the top parallel line, let's go down to this bottom one and do the same thing. So that line is intersecting with this transversal, and I create angle 5 and 8, which are vertical angles, and angle 6 and 7. So they're across from each other, vertical angles. Vertical angles fall under the category of being congruent. So how many did you count? I counted 4. So we have 4 sets. So I also want to bring to your attention when we were talking about linear pair, they are adjacent angles and they do equal 180 degrees, but just because something is adjacent does not necessarily mean that it has a rule. So just make sure when you're labeling the type of angles that if you're talking specifically that they equal 180, that we know that it's going to be linear pair or supplementary angles. So make sure you understand that. But again, adjacent means next to. All right, so now that we understand the different types of angles that are created when we have two parallel lines cut by a transversal, we can move on to try to figure out how to find the measure. Or in this case, we're going to find x first and then the measure. So for example 1, we're asked to find x, but we're looking specifically at the measure of angle CDE. So let's look at that following the directions CDE, angle CDE. We know that we're going to eventually try to find this angle. What do we need? My directions here ask me to look for the corresponding angles. If I were to pick this up and move it on top, it would match angle ACB. So we just said that the corresponding angles are going to be equal. So let's go ahead and set that up. We're going to take 3x minus 43, and we're going to set that equal to x plus 33. These two angles, those are corresponding. And once we set them up, move the x over to the left and subtract. So that's 2x, and then add 43 to 33, and that's going to be 76. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So 76 divided by 2 is 38. Since I am looking for x, I do not need to have a degree sign. So this is simply 38. The only time I would have to have a degree sign is if x was by itself and it had a degree sign. That's the only time. But if I'm simply substituting it in, I don't need that degree symbol. So now I could have also looked at this as alternate interior. Both angles are inside of my parallel lines, and they're cut by the transversal, opposite sides of that transversal. So those are called alternate interior angles. Those two are congruent. So I am going to set that up as x plus 33 is equal to 71. And again, I'm getting that information from what's shown above. Alternate interior. Now, once I subtract 33 on both sides, x is going to end up being the same thing, 38. If your x is different, you're doing something wrong because x is going to be x regardless where it's positioned. So now we're asked to find the measure of angle CDE. So I would just take that x and I would substitute it in. So the measure of angle CDE is going to be 38 plus 33. Now this time, since it's asking for the measure, I am going to use my degree symbol. Once I add that together, it's 71 degrees. But guess what? I knew that already. How did I know that? Because alternate interior angles are going to be congruent. So if this is 71, guess what? So is this one. For example 2, I'm asked to find angle CDG. Notice your vertex is in the middle. That's the angle that we're actually trying to find. So I'm trying to find this particular angle. And if I had information, I could use corresponding, but I don't have any information, so I can't use that one. And I'm asked in my directions to use the same side interior, which is also known as your consecutive. They're on the same side and they're inside of my parallel line. So those are called same side interior angles or consecutive angles. So what I would do with those is I would refer to my chart, which told me these type angles are supplementary. So I'm going to set them equal to 180. So 4x minus 43 is one angle. I am going to add it to the other angle and set them equal to 180. So that's what you do when you have supplementary angles. So plus 71, set it equal to 180. On the left-hand side, I combine like terms and I have 4x plus 28 is equal to 180. And now I want to subtract 28 on both sides. So 4x is equal to 152. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 4, which leaves me with that same x, which is 38. Again, once you find your x, it's going to be the same thing. So now it depends on how I was looking at this. If I'm asked to find the measure of angle CDG, again, angle CDG is this angle right here. We were looking at it as a linear pair. I already know the angle is 71, so the easiest way would have just said want to be 180 minus 71. and that would have given me my answer of 109 degrees. So we could just go ahead and say that. That's the easiest way. But let's just say I didn't know that the angle CDE or EDC, however you want to say it, was 71. What I would have to do then is I would have to set up the first angle, which is x plus 33. And then I would have to add it to the second angle, that's the linear pair, which is 4x minus 43. And I would have to set them equal to 180 degrees. That's what I would have to, that's how I would solve for it if I didn't know that 71 degrees existed. All right, so and what the way that would look is I would combine my like terms. So I have an x plus 4, so that's going to give me 5x. And then I have 33 minus 43, which is negative 10. Add 10 to both sides, which gives me 190. And now I want to divide both sides by 5, which leaves me with that same x, which is going to be 38. Again, I would have taken that 38 and I would have substituted it in up here. So 4 times 38. And then I would have subtracted that answer from 43, which would have still given me the same answer of 109 degrees. And just if you go back and you double check to make sure which angles you're working with, these are your only two choices. Like, subscribe, and have an awesome day.